Hey there, it's Jenny from Southern Savers. Glad to have you guys join me for our regular Monday night call. I hope everyone enjoyed their Labor Day, because it feels like it's been a lot longer than an extra week, but we did not have a call last week because of Labor Day. So this week we're going to talk frugal finances, just because in the last few days I've gotten a lot of questions in my email that have been tax related and bank account related, and just making sure that we're being the most resourceful and wise as to how we're saving our money and how we're planning for taxes and making wise decisions there. Before we get started in anything that I have extra, I'm always open to any questions that you have. So plug your questions into the chat window. You can click on the little red plus sign and type away with anything that you'd like. We can go anywhere. I am okay with jumping from Target deals to CVS to taxes to wherever you want to go. And I will, give the caveat, I guess, of I am not a public accountant. I am not, I don't work for the IRS. So, any advice that I give you, obviously, don't hold me accountable and go off and change all of your IRS withholding based on something that I said. That's just not wise. But, just to kind of give you a background as to why I would even take this topic, it's actually kind of a personal passion of mine. I love to do our taxes. I am kind of a go-to for friends and family members when they do want to know, hey, am I doing this right? Or what would be the account that you would recommend sticking things in? I enjoy that. So I enjoy sharing it with you as well. So that's what we're going to talk about as we get started. But again, ask away on anything else. I know this is probably one of the few topics we've had that hasn't been coupon related as a whole. So I'm okay with you interrupting us and taking us into coupon land. That's what most of us are here for. But it's fun to have different topics as well. So as we get started, kind of the finance side of things for a lot of us are where you have your money and making sure that you have it in accounts that are, I guess, earning the best that they can. Now in today's world, nothing is bearing good interest. So it's going to be a mute point to just be moving money around for a tiny, tiny increase of 0.01% of anything. Lord willing, that won't stay this way, but this is where we've been for probably, almost 7 years now. The markets crashed in 2008. We haven't seen interest rates come back up since. So banks aren't necessarily where we have to focus on making sure we're in the right account. But what you do need to focus on is making sure that what account you're in isn't killing you in fees. So if you're in a checking account or even a savings account that has a monthly fee, or we look at credit cards that have annual fees, you shouldn't be paying anything to house your money in a bank. So I need to make sure that I am in an account that has almost nothing in fees or definitely nothing in fees. And I mean everything here. So taking into account whether your bank is charging you for the checks that you're cashing. Do you have an X amount of checks? And if you go over it, you have to pay a fee. Paying a fee for the use of your debit card. Paying fees for even down to statements. That's what a lot of banks are charging now. So if I'm having to pay $3 a month to get my monthly statement, I don't need to do that. You need to, some people look at that and they're like, oh, it's just $3. But whoa, we need to think about this in the whole year. That's not just $3 when we look at it as 3 times 12. That's a lot more than $3. So I want to make sure when I'm looking at my bank account, I'm not just looking at the interest rate, but I'm looking at all of the fees that are attached as well. I also want to look at the security too there. So in the past, I would have said, let's all go to credit unions. Credit unions are the best. I was raised by a family that only put their money in credit unions. But we also want to make sure that we're putting our money where our money is safe. And most credit unions are, but I want to do my homework before I just start sticking my money anywhere. You know, just a personal family story, but a sweet sister-in-law of mine ended up having a lot of issues with a credit union and having to take them to court, where that wouldn't have actually have happened in a banking situation. We all quickly closed our accounts with that credit union and moved to a local bank. So just making sure you're in the best situation, but fees is something to factor in on top of interest rates. Now, one idea for you, a website that I would recommend if you have not, or you're looking at moving around some funds, would be to head to Bankrate.com, and I'll put in the whole URL. So Bankrate.com has been around for a long time, and I just put it in the chat window. I'll see if it'll fit on the screen. A lot of times URLs are too big. There you go, it fits. So if you head to Bankrate.com, they are really good at kind of gathering together all of the various accounts that you could possibly be looking for, online rates plus local rates. So you put in your zip code, and they're going to tell you what the current interest rates are for loans, for checking accounts and savings accounts, for IRAs, whatever you're possibly looking at getting. They are going to be able to kind of filter all of that in one place for you. Keep in mind, if you click through their links, they do make a little bit of money for you to open that account through them. Just so you see their side as to why they filter all this through, but it can help you to be very wise in making your decisions as to where you do want to store your money. Other things to look for before you go and set up new accounts, online accounts. It's pretty common for us to see online accounts run incentives to set up a savings account, for instance, and I don't think any of us fall on this boat. If you do, you don't need to be taking my advice on your finances, but you need a financial planner. But Capital One, for instance, right now is running an incentive where if you were to put $50,000 into a savings account, they'll give you $500 in cash. Now, hopefully you don't just have $50,000 that you're just moving around in savings accounts. But we do see a lot of banks offer, hey, if you open a new checking account with us, we'll give you an incentive to do that. Capital One actually does that on a much smaller scale every Black Friday. So if you know what, I do think we want to move some money around, or we want to open up an online checking account or online savings account, I would encourage you to actually wait for that deal with Capital One every Black Friday. And it's around, I want to say $100 to $150 in cash, depending on the accounts that you open. You open it, the one for Black Friday anyway, last year was you opened a savings account, you put $500 in a savings account, much easier than $50,000 as the deal is right now. But you put $500 in cash in the savings account. You leave it there for 60 days, and then they gave you a bonus. I think it was a $100 bonus for putting it into the savings account. They have another one for checking accounts. They even have bonuses for children's accounts. That's always on Black Friday. So you can even hold and wait for that if you want to. Moving to online banks, though, don't be scared by that. This is pretty easy. You can even deposit checks now. If you have a smartphone, you just take a picture of the check and it deposits it automatically into your online account. But a lot of folks have moved there. We moved to online accounts for an escrow account. Instead of having the escrow done in our mortgage, we held it out every month for ourselves just in an online savings account. This is a little harder to touch. It takes about 3 days to transfer money from an online account to a local account. So if I wanted to buy something, I wouldn't be that, it's not going to be tempting me like, oh, let's move this money right now and go crazy in the store. It's not really our personality, but we did want to take that extra step to make it just that much harder. Just even if it's 2 days harder to not spend the money. And that was kind of the incentive for us in moving to an online account. So we did this about 10 years ago with Capital One actually, and set up an online money market, which does not have to be a lot of money. I think it had maybe $100 in it at the time that we first started it, making that monthly escrow payment that would have come out of our mortgage straight into that savings account, and then made those yearly payments for the insurance and the taxes and whatnot straight from that account. But you can look online or local, long story short on that one. With bank accounts and interest rates, I don't know that we're going to see large changes anytime soon unless you see some changes from the Fed, and that's just watching the news. So we don't necessarily want to focus on that as being a money maker for you, but it is where we want to put, our nest egg and our rainy day funds. As most budgeting finance people will tell you, we want to have a good 6 months saved up. Dave Ramsey would say even longer than that. But having that rainy day fund is a really huge savings for you when the hot water heater breaks or the car breaks down, that it doesn't kill the budget. So if that's where you focus on having your online account, just so that it's somewhere else, it's not in the bank right here, to where when I accidentally write a check and it bounces, it takes it out of my savings account, which is how most of our banks work. I don't want my rainy day fund quite so accessible. I actually want it a little harder to get to. That's, again, where a great idea would be to head to an online bank like Capital One and opening up that account. Again, wait a month almost. We're so close to Black Friday. I guess it's still 2 months. Feels like it's close. Wait those 2 months so that you can get that incentive coming up in November. A few other things though. So that's just basic accounts. I wanted to talk taxes a little bit because we still have some time left in 2015 for you to make some changes or to make some donations, or various things that you can do to help with your taxes at the end of the year. I know not everyone watching or listening even has to pay anything. There are definitely some folks that you're earning all the credits and this isn't a problem. But for some of us, we're kind of right on that threshold where there are some things that we can do that will decrease tax liability, or in the end, help to put some money back in our pockets now versus getting a really big refund. So the first one would be the refund. Just a hit, it's kind of like an elephant in the room for some folks. And I had this conversation with a friend this morning. So first step for all of you, homework, is to head to the IRS withholding calculator and make sure that you have set things the way that you need to for 2015. So I will put that link in chat, and it's a government site. So you're not giving out personal information here, but it is going to sit there and walk you through how much you're making, how much is being withheld. So I would encourage all of you at least once a year, and halfway through the year is a good time too, just to head to the withholding calculator and make sure that you're looking good. So follow the link that I just put in chat. Get your most recent pay stub before you do that, because you're going to need that information to put it into the calculator. And it's going to ask you, how many dependents do you have? How much are you earning? How much has been withheld? But then you get to make the decision of, could you itemize your deductions? If you feel like you could, then let's plug in some of those numbers too. Are you tithing to your church on a regular basis? Do you have mortgage interest? Medical expenses, all of those things that can be factored in to that withholding calculator that would decrease the amount that you owe actually. So for the friend that I did this for this morning, we plugged in some numbers for her. She's working 2 jobs and was concerned that she may not be having enough withheld with the second job. So once we started plugging some things in, this is the first year that she's owned a house, so she has mortgage interest, she's tithing. All of that actually gets her over the standardized deduction, or the standard deduction of the single person, which is $6,300 right now. So she can then itemize, she can go a little bit above that. Turns out she's withholding too much. She has 2 options now. So if you do the calculator and you find out, actually you're gonna overpay, this is where the elephant in the room comes in, and she chose the other option, even though I was nagging her and trying to get her not to. You have 2 options. It's September, you find out you've actually overpaid too much. You can adjust your withholding with your employer to where they're taking less federal taxes out of your paycheck, means you get more for all the pay periods until December, or you can just pay too much and get a refund back in the spring. She chose the refund back in the spring. Myself and anybody in a financing environment is going to say, well, wait a second, you're letting the government hold on to your money interest-free. They're not giving you anything that money could have earned sitting in a bank account. You putting it to work, you're just letting them hold it for you and give it back to you in the spring. So most folks would say it's much wiser for you to go ahead and make sure that your withholding is spot on. Now, I'm not saying that you're going to end up owing money. It's okay to, not to be a little bit more conservative and, not decrease your withholding as much maybe as the calculator would say. So you get a tiny refund back, but we don't need to be aiming for a $1,500 or $3,000 IRS refund in the spring. Now, some folks like that windfall, but you know what really happens with the windfall? You blow it. You just got a huge chunk of money. You've been saving up some things that you wanted to buy specifically for that refund. And had you not gotten it in a windfall, you would have saved it, or the likelihood that you would have saved it is higher. So instead of getting that one big check in the spring, I decrease the amount that's being withheld for the next 7 or 8 paychecks, and I can put that money in savings now. It doesn't feel like a windfall. It's only a difference of maybe $100 a pay period for her, and she's more likely to save it versus you get a windfall and I'm going to go out and I'm going to spend it, or I'm going to save half and spend half. But you never would have done even the half of that had it been on a paycheck by paycheck, smaller increment. So I encourage everyone to head and, if you can't see the chat and you're watching this later, just Google IRS withholding calculator and you'll see the link. The link is like the top 3 links. They're all the IRS. Just follow that along. It takes maybe 5 minutes, but you will need a pay stub so that you can just see where you are. You'll need your husband's pay stub as well if you're married. But do that so that you know that you're right where you should be. In terms of deductions, if you do qualify for itemized deductions, you still have a good 3 months to make charitable contributions. So one thing that I would encourage you to do, there's an app and it's free. It's part of the TurboTax family, but it's called ItsDeductible. So you can come in and just kind of, I'll stick its name in here just in case you missed it, but ItsDeductible. You can just search for it in the App Store. They have an Android and an iOS and a Windows app. You log in with your TurboTax account. If you don't have one, just make one. But when I put the app on my phone, I can click to add a donation. I can say, you know what, I'm donating an item. I can even tell it where. So next, I've used it before. So next it's asking me, did you donate it to Habitat for Humanity or Goodwill? And let's say I donated this one to Goodwill. And I can start to add items. So going through, and you can see here, it's going to ask me, well, what did you add? So I could say, you know what, I gave them some toys, and I gave them a Barbie. And then all of a sudden, just so you can see as we're doing it, it gives me options for what I gave them, and tells me that I can say whether it's a high, meaning it's in good quality, or low. Medium would be not so great. It's been colored on by my 2-year-old. You'll notice low isn't an option. Low, they would tell you really shouldn't be donating it. But maybe I gave a Barbie doll. It was a high value Barbie doll. I can even enter a quantity on the next line. So if we gave 3 or 4 Barbie dolls, we could enter that, and it's going to keep track of it. So if you give shirts, you give shorts, you give shoes, you can sit there and track it all. Your kids will actually love helping sit down and run this for you, but now you have an itemized list of exactly what you've donated to each charity, the day you donated it, and the value. And the plus side there is that it's not just you deciding I gave about $100 worth of stuff to Goodwill. You'll actually be surprised when you do sit down and enter it all, that the value is usually more than what you would have just roughly estimated this random bag of stuff was. So take a second, take inventory through the app, and then it keeps track of it for you. You can just print it out at the end of the year, or send it basically to your accountant. If you use TurboTax, it auto imports it all into TurboTax for you, but you don't have to use TurboTax to use the app to do all of that itemization for you. Other things to look into though, and this would work for lots of folks, again, if you're itemizing, are energy rebates. If you're doing any kind of improvements or you're pondering doing improvements to your house, energy rebates are going to qualify. So another government website there would be to head to energy.gov. And we talked about this with saving on your bills last time. But heading to energy.gov, and in the right-hand corner of the site, you'll notice savings and rebates. You can sort by state. And for me, I could come in here and and again, I mentioned this last week, so for some of you this is not new, but we can come in here for South Carolina and find out, you know, if we needed to replace our hot water heater or even our air conditioner, if we wanted to put solar power on the house. There's lots of options to be able to get a tax deduction or credit back for what you've done. I'm obviously not saying you're going to save money by doing that. That's really going to cost you some money, but it's still saving you some money in that if you were going to do it and you don't look into these credits, you're really just leaving money out, you know, on the line that no one's going to take. So you might as well take it. Take the discount for yourself if you can. So Chandra's asking, in terms of the Goodwill part, do we need to still get some sort of proof to donate to Goodwill, or do they take my word for it? Definitely get the proof, and that is literally just a piece of paper, Chandra. When you drop off your bags at the donation site, they'll say, do you want a receipt? And they're just going to hand you a piece of paper that has the Goodwill name on the top. They're not even going to fill it in. And that's where I would recommend that you print out your ItsDeductible that you've entered on your phone or your tablet. You can even do ItsDeductible on the computer, so you don't have to have a smartphone, but print out what you've entered and then just staple that to the Goodwill receipt and stick it in your folder with your taxes. But you do need the receipt proof that you have donated something, not just the app that you entered things. Okay. Oh, and some folks have answered that as well. So Yesenia says, can we give a quick overview of items that we can or should be deducting? Taxes is one of those things that we just know nothing about and would like to be smarter about. So Yesenia, everyone's different in terms of what they can qualify for, but the basic deductions that a lot of folks do qualify for, first off, children. Children have a credit if they're below a certain age that you can deduct part of their daycare expenses. If you've got somebody that's in daycare, if you don't have someone in daycare and you're staying home with them, there is still a deduction that you can take even for that, considering that you have lost income to stay home with them. So that should be the first one. I'm not saying go out and have 10 children, but that's an easy one. Then in terms of charitable, anything that you donate, and don't forget about mileage. You're actually allowed to do that in the ItsDeductible app. We'll track that as well. So if I'm doing any sort of charity work, driving to and from the charity work, I can deduct my mileage in that. Mortgage interest, if you were to take out a loan, you're also allowed to deduct some of the costs of a loan. You know, the more complicated your taxes get, the harder it is for me to say, you know, yes, you could definitely do these yourself. Rental properties and whatnot, all of those are considered deductions, but now you're getting into situations where you probably want an expert to help you. Any kind of tithing to the church is to give you, again, a receipt if you have given them over $600 a year. Most churches will just automatically give you a receipt if you've given them money. They only give you one once a year. Medical expenses, dental expenses, those all lumped together. The hard part with medical is that you cannot deduct anything that is below 10% of your adjusted gross income. So your adjusted gross income is after, it's what you've earned, after your deductions are taken, various things are taken out. So it's not just total what came in, it's kind of almost like more like net of what came in, but it's 10% of that is the floor. So if you made, let's just say your adjusted gross income for the sake of math was $40,000, I cannot claim in medical expenses the first $4,000 of anything that I spent. If I spent above $4,000, I can then claim those medical or dental expenses. I can also claim mileage to and from those doctor's appointments. So a personal example for our family would be my daughter, who had surgery earlier this year, and she sees a specialist in Atlanta. We went to Atlanta for those surgeries. That's a 3-hour drive for us. We can't claim the first $4,000 worth of expenses, but our max out of pocket, sadly, was a lot more than $4,000. So we can claim everything that was above that level. and we can claim mileage to and from all of her appointments. We can actually even claim hotel bills from having to stay out of town for appointments. All of that can be factored into medical and dental. So don't ever think, oh, I'm not going to hit that level, because you just don't know what's going to pop up. And don't forget too that it's dental, because a lot of us may have great health insurance, but we're still paying a lot out of pocket. If you had a bunch of dental work that you need to get done, it's going to count in. If you wanted to get more specific on medical and dental, I am not an expert here, so I don't know if there are some exclusions if you went off and had, cosmetic surgery or whatnot, what you can deduct and what you can't. But that's one where even TurboTax and a basic tax program would walk you through in questions as to what you had done. You're again going to need receipts to document a lot of that. Mileage-wise, they will tell you you need a mileage log to document it. And they sell those. They're like $5 if you grab a paper one on Amazon. There are some apps that can also track your mileage for you. And if you aren't 100% sure as to what you did mileage-wise, I know a lot of us have given up on old school GPSs that mount into the windshield of your car. But old school GPSs actually had a really fun feature. So if you do a lot of traveling and you want kind of a secondary way to have a mileage log without you having to literally write it down every time, or you forget to write it down. That was me. I in a former life was a home health nurse. And so I needed those mileage logs. They factored into deductions for us, but I didn't always write it down. But you can actually take the little drive. Most of the GPSs have little memory cards in them, and you can take them out and plug them into your computer, and it will give you a complete history of everything you've ever plugged into the GPS and every trip you've made. Careful though, because if you're a speeder and your husband's not a speeder, it also gives the average speed that you went between those locations. You may know that from a just personal history part. I married someone who follows every speed sign that was ever out there, and I don't always do a really good job with that. But that's one. So that's in medical. That's also business. That might be more than you even follow there too. But if you do any kind of driving for a business and you don't get reimbursed for that driving, you can claim that as well. Any type of business expenses that aren't necessarily reimbursed, so uniforms that aren't reimbursed, membership dues to organizations can also all be deducted. Again, TurboTax and other tax systems will talk you through those. So don't just skip them. I guess that would be my easiest advice. If you're using TurboTax or you're using even some of the tax acts and the free programs, if they say, do you have any business expenses? Don't automatically say no. Click the yes and just see what they list as options. And then if you decide, what, I'm in here and I don't need to be in here, then back up. But at least go in to each category so that you know that you're good. Oh yeah, I don't have anything in here, and then move on. But you'll be surprised on some of those items what can be deducted that you've never really thought about before. So the app, I'm sorry, a couple of you, Yesenia chimed in, the app's name is ItsDeductible, and it's owned by TurboTax. So just making sure you are grabbing that, and it's free. It really does a great job. And 10 years ago, it existed only online. So it's fun that they are following technology and making it easier and easier for us to do that and using that. So the other things that you can look at, because we are so close to the end of the year, and this is where, some folks don't do this until the end of November or December. I would encourage you to start looking now, just like I mentioned with the IRS withholding calculator, looking at your own finances and seeing, how much have we donated to charity this year? Maybe you don't tithe to a church, but you give to other organizations, figuring out how much that is and seeing, am I close to hitting a threshold? Maybe you don't itemize, but you're super close to being able to itemize. Then let's figure out where we are, because if you're just a couple $100s away, then let's go ahead and possibly donate that money so that we can take the larger deduction off of our taxes. I would encourage most folks to never wait until January to pull out your taxes, because then it's done. I can't donate come January. I'm out. I missed my window. You really should be doing your taxes. Think about it as before Thanksgiving. Let's just get it all done before Thanksgiving so that we know where we stand. We're not going into January having missed the mark on some options because the year's over. There's only one thing that you're allowed to do after the fact, and that is, or I guess technically two things that you can do after the fact. You're allowed to donate to a retirement account, an IRA account, or to a college savings account after the year has ended. And it can be for last year, or it can be for this current year that has now started. That's it. So if I wait and I actually do my taxes in January, like 97% of America, I only have one option there. If I did find, you know what, I'm gonna have to pay a lot of money, but TurboTax tells me, you know what, if you were to donate to your IRA instead of this, then you get to keep some of it. That's a pretty big incentive. And just to kind of put that into numbers, let's assume that you are in, for ease of math, you're in a 25% tax bracket, and I'm gonna owe, try to make it easy on my head for easy math, but I'm gonna owe $1,000 in taxes. I could actually put, and this is the hard part if you don't have the cash, but you could put money into an IRA. You're allowed up to, what, $5,500 right now into an IRA. I could put money into a traditional IRA, and I'm gonna save 25% of what I put in, basically, even actually a little bit more, because your IRA is gonna come off pre-tax and could end up lowering your tax bracket. But if I go ahead and I make that contribution to an IRA, it's going to significantly reduce the amount of money that I'm going to owe in my taxes. And for some of you, will actually end up giving you a refund by making that contribution. So again, this is another one in a tax program. I encourage you to play around with it. Now, remember what you played around with before you submit taxes that are completely wrong. But if you're using an online program and it comes to the window and says, did you submit money to an IRA? And you've already entered all the other numbers for your family. Maybe you go back to that window. I've finished all of our taxes. I see how much we owe or how much we're getting back. And then I go back and I say, okay, well, let's start playing with some things. Let's go back to the 401k or the IRA window, and let's see if it says, you know, did you contribute to an IRA this year? And you said no first. Now click yes, and let's just pretend. Let's say, hey, I contributed $2,500. And see what does that impact look like on our taxes. Because you may be surprised. Now you have until April 15th to make those contributions to an IRA. A traditional IRA is going to give you the savings on this tax year. A Roth IRA, you'll have that option. A Roth IRA is not going to give you any savings on this tax year. A Roth IRA is considered post-tax, but the joy of a Roth IRA is that when you take it out, you're 65 or 55 if you are amazing and get to retire early. You take it out of a Roth IRA, you don't owe taxes on it. I paid my taxes when it went in, and I will not owe any taxes on what it has earned or what originally went in as well. That's the joy of the Roth IRA. Versus a traditional, I did not pay my taxes up front. I will owe taxes on it when I take it out when I'm 55 or 65 or whenever you retire. So just so you quickly know the difference between the two of those. But if I'm in a moment where I'm going to owe money on my taxes this year and I don't want to pay that money, it can be a big savings to go ahead and make that contribution before April 15th. Now, Yesenia says, what do I recommend in terms of tax software? TurboTax is my favorite. It's the easiest. It's online or one that you can get a CD for, so you can go either way. And they do run discounts. So just kind of looking around for the best option that you can get when the sales all start. And tax season for TurboTax actually starts after Black Friday. So you'll start to see some deals pop up for TurboTax then. But you can start to, just in your brain, be gathering things together, be organizing your account so that you know how much you contributed to charity, and playing around with the IRS withholding calculator long before TurboTax comes out, just so that you see this general ballpark of how much you would owe, and then let TurboTax give you the final numbers on all of that. And that, Yesenia, it was a really long answer on deductions, but hopefully it helps some other folks out too if you aren't always watching for some of those. If you also have any type of school loans, all of that is deductible as well. So interest on a mortgage or school loans, just kind of making sure you're not missing some of the big markers. Owning a house is a very big tax savings. We have someone that actually helps me out. She's pregnant with her first child, and her husband are trying to decide, do we want to buy a house or do we want to keep renting? Well, it's obviously the difference is, if I don't make the payments, this is going to affect my credit in a big way versus I rented a house and I got kicked out of the house that I rented and you move on to another one. Hopefully you're not in that boat. Hopefully you're paying your rent on a regular basis, no matter where you live. But this is where myself and Dave Ramsey differ. So Dave Ramsey would tell you, you shouldn't buy a house until you can pay cash. Personally, buying a house and having a mortgage on a house is a huge way to be helping your credit score. You're making those monthly payments, but you're helping yourself out as well, because you are getting the deduction for the interest off your mortgage. You are going to be saving on various other ways too, because I can deduct my property taxes. I can, lots of things that go into the savings tax-wise for the house. But I'm also helping myself out because instead of just paying rent and throwing that money away every month, I'm actually putting some money in an investment. My house has value, and as I pay down my mortgage, that's value that's really in my pocket whenever I sell the house. You pay off the mortgage and you sell the house, it's all money back in your pocket. I'm not going to say that you shouldn't get the mortgage and pay it down faster. Definitely work on paying it down faster. But to live in I'm not going to buy a house until I can pay cash for it, it's putting yourself in some tricky situations. You're missing all of the tax savings on the interest. You're basically paying someone else's mortgage for them, and you're not getting any of the benefits on building up the equity in that home. You're just throwing away money every month. You're also not building up your own credit history by not having a mortgage. And so just to throw this one out there, keep in mind that your life insurance, your car insurance, a lot of your insurance rates are based on your credit report. So if I don't have any sort of credit report whatsoever, that actually hurts me in terms of the costs that I'm paying for other bills. So just lots of reasons. Now, if you are a poor money manager, don't run out and get a mortgage, but just to throw that one out there, to go against the grain of Dave Ramsey, it would be a money saver for you in the long run, possibly, to be building equity in a house, to be getting the tax deductions of the house. And sadly, home ownership's at like an all-time low for the last 50 years right now. Folks just they're sticking in rentals. They aren't buying houses. Some of that's probably because we all move around a lot more than we used to. But I would encourage a lot of you, if you're on the fence trying to decide, now's a good time to get out there and see what you can find. Be an HGTV family and fix something up. But I would encourage you to do that. So we've done a really good job of staying on focus with questions. But if you guys do have other questions that are off of the tax finance side, feel free to throw them out, or questions that are in the finance side. I'll gladly go wherever your questions are in any of that. In terms of mortgages, since I am pushing everyone to go out and buy a house tomorrow, not really. I would get you to ponder whether you can afford it or not, but to look at getting a mortgage if we want to go there, since we talked about bank accounts and interest rates. Obviously, whatever you get approved for in terms of a mortgage does not mean that that is what you can afford. So just because the bank told you that you could buy a $400,000 house doesn't mean you need to go out and do that. I would encourage you to instead focus on what can we afford each month, how much can our monthly payment be total, and then I would encourage you actually to sit there and try to figure out what your monthly payment would be with a 15-year mortgage, not a 30-year. The reason for that is the interest rates on a 15-year mortgage are usually almost an entire percentage point lower than a 30-year mortgage. But obviously I'm paying it off in 15 years, so the monthly payment is higher. Play around with mortgage calculators, and you can just Google mortgage calculators. You'll find a ton of examples or a ton of options out there. But if you were to buy a $65,000 house right now, which is a pretty tiny house, over a 30-year period of time, the monthly payment is $270 a month. And if I go to a 15-year payment time period, it's $445 a month. So you can see, it's almost doubling it. But could I afford to do that? And I would encourage you to look into it. It's decreasing your payoff time, and it's increasing the amount of equity that you're earning in it every single month, because you're paying so much more towards the principal instead of the interest. It's a lower interest rate. It's not maxed out over 30 years. So seeing if you can really get down in terms of how much you're borrowing, not getting a massive house, but getting a tiny one that we can pay off faster. Then you sell the tiny house and you move up and up and up and up. So that would be the easier way to having a mortgage that we can afford, and then working towards a larger house if that's your goal. But we're not going straight to the larger house that we can't afford in the first place. That's kind of what killed the market in 2008. So let's go the smart way with what we can afford, almost less than we can afford, so that later we're in a really good spot in a larger house if that's what you want. So Melanie asked a question that's completely off topic, which I love, thank you, is what are my thoughts on Pinecone Research, and is it worth my time? So there are tons of survey companies out there. Pinecone Research is one of the better ones, and they do pay better. Are you gonna make a ton of money with it, Melanie? Not necessarily. I've seen some folks that make maybe $5 to $10 a day, and that is a ton of money per day in terms of surveys. My guess is that they would be looking at probably 3 to 4 hours worth of surveys to make that money, though. That's not probably the best use of your time in terms of trying to find some money online. If you're trying to find some easy money, Melanie, I think your time would be much better spent looking at selling things on eBay, selling things on Craigslist, even just meet in public places, or sending clothes to some of the online consignment places like ThredUp. You can order a bag from ThredUp for free and then go through your closet. They have to be in good condition. They won't take anything that they can't sell, but I could send back some clothes or send to ThredUp some clothes that I'm not gonna wear. They just give you cash. So that way I'm gonna spend, what, maybe 30 minutes going through my closet, my kids' closet, picking out some clothes. The last time that we did this, we got about 50 bucks for what we sent. I couldn't have done that in 30 minutes on a survey site. 50 bucks on a survey site would probably be, they really pay less than like $3 an hour, if that even. It's probably more like $1 an hour when the surveys are all said and done, and how much time you spent on them. A lot of them you're not even gonna qualify for. You're gonna do the beginning part of the survey, find out you're kicked out on like page 3. So that part's frustrating with surveys, but there is a little bit of money that you can make there. So I don't wanna like discourage you and tell you not to do it at all. There's some that you can make, but I wouldn't put a ton of effort into it unless you're just sitting on the couch at night and you didn't have anything else to do. Then let's do a survey. But I don't know that I would do a lot of them. So Teray asks, can I explain tax brackets? Let's go to that question first, and then we'll talk about a monthly budget second. So tax brackets are based on how much you earn, and they are set in stone. They're kind of set in stone. They fluctuate every year based on what they decide will be the tax brackets for the next year. In terms of 2015, I'm pulling up a link now that I will put in here. Let's see. Here's an article. You'll have to wait through an ad that pops up, but this is a good article on Forbes, Teray, that will kind of walk you through tax brackets and standard deductions. So follow that link. Tax brackets are adjusted annually for inflation. So that's why I'm saying they're not kind of set in stone, but let's say that you make anywhere, right now it's for 2015, just looking at the Forbes article, you make anywhere between $9,226 and $37,450. Then you're going to owe a 10% base on the first 9,000, and then anything over the 9,000 you owe 15% on. And then the next bracket up, I owe the 10% base, I owe the 15,000 bracket, and then I owe anything over the 15% bracket, I owe 25%. So it's kind of like you're paying the bit at each level that is due, and then if you make a ton of money, then you're going to owe all of those little brackets plus the bit over the last level. So they don't let you skip a level, but if that helps you understand. So when I was kind of mentioning earlier, maybe you make $40,000 or your adjusted gross income was $40,000, and then you think, you know what happens if I were to donate $4,000 to a traditional IRA? Well, you can see just looking at a tax bracket, if the next bracket below you is actually at the 37, or let's just round here, 37.5 mark, and I have an adjusted gross of 40, but I contribute 4 into a traditional IRA, that's actually going to put my adjusted gross income below the 37.5 mark. So I'm not going to have anything taxed at a 25% rate. I'm only going to be in the 15% bracket and the 10 for the first little bit. So that's the kind of the reason that I want to pull how much have I made, so that I can see how I could maybe donate a little bit more or put some money into the IRA to try to reduce that bit that's bumping over into another bracket, or overall reduce my general tax liability as a whole, whether you don't care about what bracket you're in or not. So that's what I wanted just to understand a little bit more on brackets. In terms of the best way to commit to a monthly budget, there are some good sites that will help you map one out. One in particular, let me make sure I'm giving you the right URL, is mint.com. And Mint is actually owned, again, by Intuit and TurboTax. But Mint helps you to map out your bracket. Mint works online or also has an app. Mint tracks your bills, but it helps you to see where your money is going every month. So heading to mint.com, creating an account, it's free. Creating an account, that's going to help you to see where you've already been spending money and to map all of it out so that you can categorize it better. You can figure out maybe, whoa, we're spending a ton on eating out, just by watching things fall in, and then you can start to make some changes. The best way to commit to a monthly budget, though, is going to start with your whole family being on the same page. You and your husband have to be together on that, because if I tell my husband, I don't want you eating out for lunch anymore, but he doesn't like that idea, that's not going to last but maybe a day and a half, or he's going to hate it and hate me for making that even the mention. So we have to both be on the same page. Some folks would urge you to do a cash-based budget as well. So if you haven't heard of that one, that's where we literally take out of the bank the cash, put it in envelopes or put it somewhere so that when that envelope is empty, there is nothing left in the eating out budget. We can't eat out. The envelope is empty. So going to a true cash system, if you're having a really hard time sticking on a budget, can be helpful as well. Latricia is mentioning ynab.com. There are lots of things that will help you kind of map it out. In terms of getting things just in a spreadsheet, Yesenia is saying that that was the hard part for Mint. Just wanted to see it in a spreadsheet. That might be where you want to just spend the $20 or $30 and get Quicken or QuickBooks. QuickBooks would be more the business side of things. So Quicken, again, I'm sitting with a lot of Intuit products, but they really do own the finance world. And I'll stick this in chat as well. So Quicken is owned by Intuit, TurboTax, the whole family. And Quicken, you can import your bank statements, your credit card statements into, you can categorize it, you can print reports, you can see a spreadsheet. They have an online version of Quicken that you pay, I think it's almost monthly, But then they also just have download versions. For a lot of folks, the starter edition is really all that you need. And it's $30. You don't have to get a new version every year. They make a new version every year. Don't fall into that. Just stick with the old version for a couple of years. And the $30, I think personally, will be money well spent. The joy of doing Quicken as well is that if you do end up using TurboTax in the end, you can literally click a button and TurboTax just pulls in everything from Quicken for you, so that I don't even have to. I entered it all throughout the year. I'm really done. I'm going to make sure that my W-2s line up with what pulled over from Quicken, but I'm not going to have to do a lot more. So that would be the plus side of picking a money management software that goes along with a tax software, which we don't necessarily see with some of the other companies and programs that are out there. So Nan asks a really good question. As a retiree, I'm no longer able to contribute to IRAs and Roths, et cetera. Any suggestion of where to put funds safely? So Nan, one thing that I would recommend for you, you are still allowed to contribute to, my brain just left me, college savings accounts, and they can actually be in your name. And you may not want to do higher education, but I can put the money into a 529 plan in your name for college education. That is allowed because I don't get a federal deduction from a 529 plan. I get a state deduction in many states, but no federal incentive to do that. But you're still allowed to do that. If you did end up wanting it, you can use that money for higher education. You can actually use it for anything as well. You can take the money out and you're not penalized for it having been in the 529 plan. But for you, it could be a way that maybe I am passing down money to grandkids. I'm putting it into a 529 plan that's in my name, and then I make them beneficiaries on the plan later on. That's one option for you, and it's kind of interesting to use a college savings plan as a savings vehicle. But it does work. Money market accounts, though, are fine. Anybody can put something in a money market account. There's no tax incentive to that. The tax incentive for you may be that we save up money and we start to put it in other investment focuses that aren't traditional retirement investments, but are larger, are tangible investments as well. So if I'm just, putting you in a really big bucket here, Nan, I'm just going to assume that you're loaded. I don't know, but you've saved up enough over time. We have money in a money market account to actually make a down payment on a rental property. This is now a tangible investment, but it's also become a tax deduction because I can deduct the interest on the rental property. I can deduct a ton of stuff on the rental property, but it's also earnings for you that is probably a larger earning than we would ever see in a banking environment, especially in the last 7 years. And with the stock market kind of collapsing as well, it could be a very tangible way to be saving as well. And then Nan also mentions Dave Ramsey's budgeting tool. Dave Ramsey has a paid version as well that's not the free version, that gives you a little bit more behind it too. If you're looking for, as Yesenia was mentioning, I just want the spreadsheet, I just want to see some data, you might want to look into that as well. Okay, well, we've hit everybody's questions. So if y'all have something else, feel free to stick it in the chat window over the next couple of minutes. And we hit a lot of what I had. We actually went a little further. I had not planned on, going into rental properties and whatnot. So if there's something that we didn't mention that you would like to talk about, feel free to ask as well. Also, you can always send me an email, jenny@southernsavers.com. To recap, just for anyone that kind of only listened to a piece of it, the big sites that I recommended, again, are Bankrate.com, and that's just for going and comparing interest rates on mortgages, on checking accounts, savings accounts, money markets. They will let you compare online and local. So Bankrate.com. The IRS Withholding Calculator. So just Google IRS Withholding Calculator. That's everyone's homework. Go and just make sure you're good on your withholding. And you can even go ahead and play with next year. You can also play with both your husband and your incomes so that you're making sure both of you are withholding the right amount, and it will tell you what to change it to if you are withholding too much. And then tax-wise, a couple of folks asked what tax program I would recommend, and I would say TurboTax. It's online, it's the easiest, it's very plug and play, it's intended for you to do it all by yourself and to not go and seek someone else out. And that's my holdup with H&R Block. So H&R Block has a version that you can pay for yourself, but you have to remember that they have in-person places as well. So you have to start to wonder, when the usability on it is difficult, is that why it's difficult? Because you want me to give up and you want me to take my taxes to somebody here in my town. I don't know. I like the TurboTax side that can handle pretty much anything you can throw at it. But those are the big ones of everything that we've talked about. Oh, and the app, again, was ItsDeductible, which is owned by the TurboTax family, but it's free. So those are the big resources that we talked about. We are going to have a hangout next Monday night, and then the next Monday we're going to take off. My kiddo has a follow-up in Atlanta, so that just makes for a really long day for us. But we will definitely be here next Monday night. I don't know what we're going to talk about, so if y'all ever have ideas of where we should go, send me an email. I'm always up for it. This week's was solely based on emails that I had gotten last week. So I am okay with, planning as we go in terms of what people want to talk about each week. But hopefully this wasn't over your head. You were able to follow some of it. And you can always send me an email too if you had questions about something that we talked about. I don't mind at all. Hoping you understand something that I mentioned a little bit better. So please do that as well. So, I'm going to go ahead and cut us off here then. I see Nan's asking a question. So Nan, I'll hang around in the chat room just to make sure I got it answered. And I will see you all next week. Y'all have a good week, and we'll talk again soon.